I never planned to reveal my success to my family. For years I had watched them mock my mediocre career choices, enduring their constant reminders of how I was wasting my potential. But life has a funny way of forcing confrontations, especially when you least expect them. The annual Morrison family barbecue was in full swing, the late summer air thick with the scent of grilled meat and barely concealed judgment. Our sprawling backyard, which my parents took such pride in maintaining, was dotted with relatives clutching paper plates and solo cups, their laughter carrying across the perfectly manicured lawn. "Oh, there's Sarah." My mother's voice carried that familiar tone of disappointment as I approached with my modest pasta salad contribution. "Still working as a secretary, dear?" I adjusted my simple sundress, deliberately chosen to be unremarkable, and forced a smile. At 32, I had mastered the art of appearing exactly as unsuccessful as my family believed me to be. Administrative assistant, Mom. At Thompson Industries. My sister Madison swooped in, designer purse swinging from her arm, her new promotion as marketing director practically radiating from her expensive highlights. "Mom, you won't believe what happened at work today." The CEO himself praised my latest campaign. I bit back a smile, remembering the email I had reviewed just that morning about Madison's presentation. The praise had actually come from her direct supervisor, not the CEO Umi. But of course she didn't know that. "That's wonderful, honey." Mom beamed, completely forgetting my existence. "You've always been so driven." Unlike. Her eyes flickered to me then away. The thing is, I wasn't just an administrative assistant at Thompson Industries. I owned it. 3 years ago I had purchased the company through a series of shell corporations, carefully keeping my identity hidden. The previous owner had been desperate to sell, and I had spent years building my fortune through smart investments and strategic acquisitions. Thompson Industries was just the latest addition to my portfolio, and I had chosen to keep my ownership private. It was easier that way. No expectations, no family members asking for favors or jobs. Just me, quietly running a $500 million company while my family continued to see me as their greatest disappointment. Aunt Patricia waddled over, wine sloshing in her glass. "Sarah dear, have you thought about taking some business classes? Maybe then you could move up from answering phones." I had 2 MBAs and a PhD in business strategy, but they didn't know that. "I'm comfortable where I am, Aunt Patricia." "That's your problem," my father joined in, burger in hand. "No ambition. Your sister's already making 6 figures and you're still pushing papers." "I made 8 figures last year, Dad." Madison preened under the praise. "Actually, we're having a huge company meeting next week. The CEO is finally making an appearance. Everyone's so excited." Yes, I had finally decided it was time to step out of the shadows at Thompson Industries. The company had grown significantly under my leadership, even though I had managed everything through proxies and virtual meetings. But changes were coming and I needed to take a more public role. "Will you even get to see the CEO, Sarah?" my mother asked with fake concern. "I mean, from your little desk in the corner?" Before I could respond, a sleek black Tesla pulled into our driveway. My heart skipped. I recognized that car. What was Marcus doing here? He was Madison's direct supervisor and one of the few people who knew my true identity. Madison straightened up, smoothing her hair. "Oh my God, that's my boss. What's he doing here?" Marcus stepped out of his car, looking impeccable in casual weekend wear that probably cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found me and he smiled broadly. "Madame Sue," he called out, walking towards us. "I didn't expect to see you here today." The hot dog fell from my father's suddenly limp fingers. Madison's face drained of all color. My mother's wine glass slipped from her grasp, shattering on the patio with a crash that seemed to echo across the suddenly silent backyard. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my intentionally plain sundress and smiled. "Hello, Marcus. Welcome to my family's barbecue." The silence that followed was deafening. Years of carefully maintained deception crumbled in an instant. I could feel every eye in the backyard fixed on me, minds racing to process this revelation. Madison found her voice first, though it came out as more of a squeak. You're the CEO? But that's impossible. You're just a secretary." I turned to her, maintaining my calm smile. "Actually, Madison, I'm your boss. I own Thompson Industries. Have for the past 3 years." My father's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "What kind of joke is this?" Marcus stepped forward, his presence adding weight to the revelation. Oh, it's no joke, sir. Your daughter is one of the most brilliant CEOs I've had the pleasure of working with. Thompson Industries has tripled its market value under her leadership. My mother grabbed the nearest chair for support. But you bring grocery store pasta salad to family gatherings. You live in that tiny apartment. You wear things from Target. I straightened my shoulders, finally letting a hint of my true self show through. I choose to live simply, Mom. It doesn't mean I have to. The whispers started spreading through the gathered relatives like wildfire. Aunt Patricia was frantically Googling Thompson Industries on her phone. Uncle George was choking on his beer. And Madison looked like she might faint. Marcus seemed to realize he had just detonated a bomb in the middle of our family barbecue. He cleared his throat awkwardly. I apologize if I've overstepped, Madame Sue. I saw the address on the company's old records and thought I'd drop by to discuss the Morgan acquisition. Before I could respond, Madison burst out, her voice shrill with disbelief and growing anger. This is ridiculous. I've been working my ass off for 3 years climbing the corporate ladder and you've been what? Secretly watching me? Laughing at me behind my back. I met her eyes steadily. No, Madison. I've been running a company. Your performance reviews, promotions, and salary increases were all based on merit, or lack thereof. I paused meaningfully. Including the times you took credit for your team's work. She flushed deep red. Everyone in the family knew Madison had a habit of claiming others' achievements as her own. She'd been doing it since we were children. You're lying, my father suddenly announced, his voice gruff with denial. Our Sarah? Who? She can barely make decisions about what to wear in the morning. I felt a familiar sting at his words, but I was done playing small. Would you like to see my financial statements, Dad? Or maybe the company's quarterly reports? I'm sure Aunt Patricia has found plenty of articles by now. Indeed, Aunt Patricia was staring at her phone, her face growing paler by the second. Thompson Industries. Valued at, oh my God. My mother had finally found her voice. But why didn't you tell us? Why pretend to be less? I looked around at my family. The people who had spent years dismissing me, belittling my choices, treating me like I was somehow deficient because I didn't broadcast my ambitions. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. When I left Williams & Partners to start my own investment firm, you told everyone I had been fired. When I moved into a smaller apartment to save money for acquisitions, you called me a failure. When I worked late nights building my company, you said I couldn't keep a social life. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing he was witnessing something deeply personal. Perhaps I should come back another time. No, stay, I said firmly. We might as well get everything out in the open now. I turned back to my family. I kept my success quiet because I wanted to succeed on my own terms, without having to manage your expectations or demands. And honestly, watching how you treated me when you thought I was just a secretary told me everything I needed to know about who you really are. Madison's husband Tom, who had been quietly watching the drama unfold, suddenly spoke up. Wait, if you're the Sue, then that means... His voice trailed off as realization dawned. Yes, I confirmed. I'm the one who rejected your proposal for a private office last month. The company couldn't justify a corner office for a mid-level manager. The gathered relatives burst into poorly concealed snickers. Madison's face turned crimson. I assume the Morgan acquisition you mentioned is about the merger? My Uncle George, a business lawyer, piped up. The family vultures were already circling, seeing opportunity in their newly discovered successful relative. That's confidential company information, I replied coolly. Just like the raise Madison's been bragging about requesting won't be happening. You can't do that. Madison protested. That's discrimination. Surely I can. Your last 3 projects were over budget, your team has the highest turnover rate in the company, and your latest campaign proposal was rejected because it was remarkably similar to our competitor's campaign from last year. I smiled thinly. I may be your sister, but I'm also your boss. And unlike our family dynamics, my company runs on merit, not favoritism. My mother collapsed into a nearby chair, fanning herself dramatically. All this time, all the things we said. Yes, I cut in. All the times you called me useless. All the family events where you seated me at the kids' table because I hadn't achieved enough to sit with the adults. All the snide comments about my clothes, my car, my life choices. I straightened my Target dress proudly. I remember every single one. The silence that followed was heavy with realization and regret. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Madison was staring at her expensive shoes, probably calculating how many more payments she had left on them with her current salary. Marcus cleared his throat. For what it's worth, your daughter has built one of the most respected companies in the industry. Our employee satisfaction rates are the highest in the sector, our profit margins are exceptional, and our corporate culture is studied at business schools. Speaking of business, I added, reaching into my simple handbag and pulling out an envelope, I have something for you, Dad. His hands trembled slightly as he took it. Inside was a property deed for his beloved backyard, the scene of so many family gatherings where I'd been belittled and dismissed. The mortgage you've been struggling with? I said softly. Paid off. Consider it a return on all the investments you didn't make in me. Aunt Patricia choked on her wine. Uncle George dropped his phone. Madison looked like she might actually pass out this time. Now, Marcus, I turned to my colleague, deliberately shifting to my CEO voice, the one I used in board meetings. About the Morgan acquisition. Shall we discuss it over dinner? I know an excellent restaurant that isn't owned by any of my relatives. As Marcus and I walked toward his Tesla, leaving my shell-shocked family behind, I heard my mother's faint voice. But what about the barbecue? I turned back one last time, surveying the scattered paper plates, the abandoned potato salad, the frozen faces of my relatives. I think we're done here. I have a company to run. I smiled, channeling every ounce of success I'd hidden for years. Oh, and Madison, don't be late for the company meeting next week. We'll be announcing some organizational changes. The drive away from my parents' house was silent for a few moments before Marcus spoke. I truly apologize for dropping that bomb. I had no idea they didn't know. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Don't apologize. Some revelations need to happen even if we don't plan them. Will you be okay? He asked, glancing at me with concern. I thought about the years of hiding, of diminishing myself, of swallowing their casual cruelty. I thought about the freedom that came with finally being seen for who I really was. You know what? I said, watching my family's house disappear in the rearview mirror. I've never been better. The following week, I walked into Thompson Industries wearing a power suit instead of my usual modest attire. The whispers followed me through the hallway, employees doing double takes as they recognized the quiet woman they'd barely noticed before. Madison was waiting outside my office. Her new ID badge already reflected her transfer to our smaller satellite office across town. Sometimes being CEO meant making tough decisions. Sometimes it meant making necessary ones. As I settled behind my desk, I glanced at the family photo I'd kept hidden in my drawer all these years. It showed a younger me standing slightly apart from my beaming family, already learning to make myself smaller, less visible. I took the photo out of its frame and dropped it in the shredder. Then I opened my laptop and began my day as I had for the past 3 years. Running my company, making decisions, and finally living my truth. The secretary I'd been pretending to be wouldn't be coming to work anymore. The CEO I'd always been had a company to run. And somewhere across town, my family was still trying to process that their greatest disappointment had become their greatest success story. But I didn't need their approval anymore. I had stopped waiting for it the day I bought my first company, even if they were only realizing it now. Success, I had learned, didn't need an audience. It just needed conviction. And maybe sometimes a dramatic reveal at a family barbecue. The weeks following the barbecue revelation were a whirlwind of uncomfortable family dynamics and corporate adjustments. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, each one suddenly remembering our special bond and having a brilliant business proposition to discuss. Aunt Patricia called about her son's startup. Uncle George wanted to review our corporate legal contracts. Even my mother's bridge club members started showing up at Thompson Industries' reception desk, claiming to be close family friends. I instructed security to turn them all away. The most dramatic transformation was in my parents' behavior. My mother started showing up at my office with homemade lunches, trying to make up for years of neglect with chicken sandwiches and guilt-laden apologies. I just don't understand why you felt you couldn't tell us, she said one day, rearranging the family photos she'd brought to brighten up my office. I'd thrown them away as soon as she left. Really, Mom? Remember my college graduation? When Madison got a car for making Dean's List, and I got a lecture about wasting my time with business courses instead of finding a husband. She had the grace to look embarrassed. We just wanted what was best for you. No, I corrected her, you wanted what looked best to others. My father took a different approach. He started bombarding me with newspaper clippings about Thompson Industries, as if I might have missed the news about my own company. Each article came with his handwritten notes in the margins. My daughter did this. Sarah's company. That's my girl. The same daughter he'd called useless just weeks before. Madison's situation proved the most challenging. After her transfer to the satellite office, she filed a formal complaint alleging familial discrimination. Our HR department, unaware of her relationship to me, conducted a thorough investigation. The results weren't what she expected. The investigation revealed multiple instances of her taking credit for subordinates' work, manipulating timesheets, and using company resources for personal projects. The evidence was damning enough that instead of firing her, I gave her a choice: resign with a decent reference or face a very public termination. She resigned the next day, though not without a final dramatic scene in my office. "You're ruining my life," she screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. "After everything I've done for this company." I remained seated, calm. "Everything you've done? You mean like taking credit for the Johnson campaign that your assistant designed? Or perhaps you're referring to the expense reports you've been falsifying. That's normal business practice." "No, Madison. That's fraud." I slid a folder across my desk. "Here's your resignation letter. I've already signed the reference that confirms you worked here and left voluntarily. It's more than you deserve, but I'm doing it because despite everything you're still my sister." She snatched the folder, her hands shaking. "You think you're so perfect now, don't you? The big CEO looking down on everyone else." "No," I replied quietly. "I think I'm someone who finally stopped letting this family define my worth." After she left, I received a series of angry texts from my parents, demanding I fix things with Madison. I responded with screenshots of her fraudulent reports and a simple message: "Would you prefer I press charges instead?" They stopped texting after that. The corporate changes I implemented went far beyond Madison's departure. I reorganized the entire marketing department, promoted several overlooked employees, and implemented a new merit-based evaluation system. Thompson Industries hadn't succeeded through nepotism, and it wouldn't start now. 6 months after the BBQ revelation, I attended another family gathering Thanksgiving at my parents' house. This time I arrived in my Tesla, wearing clothes that reflected my actual status. The difference in how I was treated was both amusing and sad. Relatives who had once ignored me now hung on my every word. Aunt Patricia bragged to her friends about her CEO niece. Uncle George prominently displayed a newspaper article about Thompson Industries on the mantelpiece. Madison didn't attend. She'd taken a job at a smaller company, having learned that her family name no longer carried the weight it once did. I heard through the grapevine that she was actually doing well, finally having to rely on her own merits rather than family connections. As we sat down to dinner, my mother clinked her glass for attention. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "To Sarah, who showed us all that success doesn't always look the way we expect it to." I raised my glass with the others, but added my own quiet addendum, "and to authenticity, which matters more than appearances." Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, my father caught me by the door. He looked older, more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. "I was wrong," he said simply. "About everything. About you." I nodded, accepting his words but not offering absolution. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. The following Monday I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports and thinking about how life had changed. My assistant buzzed in. "Your mother's here again. With lunch." I smiled slightly. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." I had a business to run after all. As I turned back to my work, I caught my reflection in the window, confident, powerful, no longer hiding who I was. The secret CEO was gone, replaced by a woman who had learned that the best revenge isn't wealth or success, but finally, unapologetically being yourself. On my desk sat a frame with a new photo, not of family, but of my corporate team at our last charity event. These were